The Yankees split their 4-game series with the Astros over the weekend. So check this out. They won only one of their past 10 series overall. So there's a lot of news coming out of the Bronx over the weekend. So here's Yankees beat writer for the New York Post, Greg Joyce, with all the reports and the 411 on what's going down with this team. All right, Greg, obviously we've got to start with Carlos Rodon. Like, he left the game with hamstring tightness after what people are calling another bad outing. So at this time, we're still waiting on the official word on his status. But let's talk about the signing as a whole. As of now, what grade would you give the signing and why?
Yeah, I think at best it's incomplete. At worst, much worse than that. Obviously, he's 6 starts in. He missed almost the first half of the season with the forearm and back injury that he had in spring training, and then came back, had a rocky beginning, and then he had one really good start against the Mets, and it seemed like they were turning a corner. Maybe that was the kind of Carlos Rodon that they were getting. Obviously, it has not continued. He wasn't able to build momentum off that one. And then yesterday, he comes down with a hamstring injury. So he didn't seem overly concerned about potentially landing to an IL stint. But obviously, he was going to go for an MRI, and that'll have the final say. But it's just, it seems like every time they start to get some momentum going with him, it kind of falls back. And now there's another injury concern. And this is a guy that, they signed to a 6-year, $162 million contract, largely based on, the last 2 years he was really good and he was really healthy. Before that, he dealt with a number of injuries, and so he's a guy with an injury history, and so that kind of gives you some concern a little bit. But obviously, when he's right and when he's healthy, he can be one of the game's best. The Yankees just haven't been able to see that so far, and they especially need him to get going here in the second half if he's able to stay off the injured list, just because their starting pitching depth has taken a hit here, and as they try to make this playoff push, they could use the best version of him, which they really haven't seen through 6 starts.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to incomplete on those transcripts. And if the Yankees do make a postseason run, the way he can clear his name here in New York is showing up and balling out in the postseason. Another person who is his name's blown up on social media, Giancarlo Stanton. He's taking heat for his lackadaisical base running that he had on Saturday. When you look at some of the down seasons that some of these players are having and some of the effort that we're seeing being put on tape, I mean, is it safe to say that this team is thrown in the towel on the season?
I don't know if I'd go that far just yet, but obviously that was not a great look, when that happened with Giancarlo. Obviously, it's a little bit of a gray area with him because he has a history of lower body injuries, even earlier this year when he was trying to leg out a double. Led to a hamstring injury that cost him some time. So he's a guy that can kind of be a little bit cautious on the base pass, and certainly seemed to be, a little bit there. It just wasn't, between the send home and then the way he, went around third base going home, it was just not a great look overall. But yeah, like with him, it's not exactly black and white, it seems like, just because he does have that history of the lower body stuff, but they need, in that situation, that game, it's not what you want to see, obviously. And I think some of the other guys that are having down years, obviously we found out recently with Anthony Rizzo, there's, seems to be an explanation for the last 2 months of his brutal struggles with kind of, experiencing some of those post-concussion syndrome. So I think there's some certain factors, but overall, like you said, just a number of guys having down years, having them together, and then when you have plays like that, it's obviously, that stuff can build up, and when the Yankees aren't going good, obviously that sticks out like a sore thumb.
All right, so they dropped 4.5 games behind Toronto in the wild card race, and they start a new series in Chicago against the White Sox tonight. So is it safe to say that this series is make or break for their season?
Yeah, I think it's got to be. It's got to be one of those series where they at least win 2 out of 3, if not sweep it. They really haven't gone on one of those patented hot streaks that they keep on saying they feel like is in them, but they haven't shown it. And if they're going to start it, here's the time to do it against a White Sox team that sold off most of its top talent at the trade deadline. They still have a few guys left, but really they sold away most of their valuable pieces. This is a team that you need to beat up on if you're going to have any chance of going to the postseason. So it's got to start. It's got to start now and taking advantage of these poor teams. Obviously, we saw them sweep the Royals last month. That was their only time they've won 3 straight games in a while. They've had 2 here or there, but it's just like they haven't been able to go on one of those those patented hot streaks that really turn things around. Like you said, the 4.5 out of the wild card. they really need to get it going now, and you got to take advantage of the bad teams. Obviously, we've seen them struggle even against some of the lesser competition coming out of the All-Star break, but they really need to get it going now. Less than 2 months to go. It's got to start now against this White Sox team.
Fangraphs is currently giving this Yankees team a 15.7% chance to make the postseason. We may have to check back in with you after this series and see if that number went up or if it went down. Greg Joyce, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Brandon.